So, after the string family and the woodwind family, we come further to the shiny instruments at the back, which are the brass family. We have the trumpets, the trombones, the tuba, and at the side, slightly, are the French horns. Now, brass instruments all make their sound when a brass player buzzes their lips like this, and puts that against a mouthpiece. So buzzing their lips causes the vibration, which causes the instrument to make their sound. So the trumpets are the highest, they use treble clef, the horns come next, and then the trombones, which use bass clef and tenor clef, and the tuba, which uses bass clef. And right around the sides and at the back, we can see an arrangement of lots of interesting looking instruments. They are the percussion instruments, which can be hit or sort of played together like the cymbals, and which all have a really exciting different sound and timbre. So I would go away and have a listen to the Young Person's Guide and have a look at all these really exciting instruments and hear and see how they produce their sound. Now, of course, we also have the piano. The piano doesn't often feature in the orchestra, but there are some really cool moments where it does feature. For example, in Shostakovich's Fifth Symphony. So listen out for the unusual piano sounds in that. Now, as well as instruments of the orchestra, we have a whole extra family of instruments, which is the keyboard family, which you also need to know a little bit about. So we have a piano, which if you have one at home, why not take the lid off and have a look inside. Players play the keys at the front, and behind, inside the piano, are strings of different lengths, which produce different pitches. And there are little hammers which hit each of the strings to make them vibrate, which make them sound. Now, in a harpsichord looks very similar to the piano, but instead of having hammers which hit the strings, they have little plectrums which pluck the strings, which means that they can't do dynamics like you have on a grand piano. And they sort of have a very spindly sort of sound, but they're really beautiful, so have a listen to them if you haven't already heard one. We have the celeste as well, which inside the celeste, instead of having strings, we have bars of metal. So it sounds like a xylophone, but it looks like a piano. And one of the most well-known celeste solos out there is probably the Harry Potter one, which we all know and love. And of course, if you've ever been inside a church, you can't fail to miss the organ. So the organ produces its sound when air is forced up these pipes of different lengths, and there's a little sort of a slit in each pipe, and when air is forced against them, then it causes that air column to split and vibrate, which produces a sound. So of course, keyboard instruments both use bass clef and treble clef for their huge range of notes. I think the biggest grand piano I've ever seen has 8 octaves on it, so that is a lot of notes, meaning that they use both clefs.